go. Perfect. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for doing this. I appreciate it. We've had a couple of people excited to have you here. And so, just out of curiosity, where are you located currently?
Yeah, I'm located in the beaches of Toronto, Canada. So it's snowing outside.
So you said the beaches of Toronto. Okay.
Yeah, this little hippie neighborhood called the
Okay.
beach, literally called the beach.
Okay. I mean, I've been to Toronto once, and it was a long time ago, and I don't remember seeing the ocean there, but maybe,
It's Lake Ontario. You wouldn't want to swim in it. Like I had a dog, and I used to like walk it down there, and it would like pick up dead fish and stuff. It's really an unfortunate situation at that beach, but it's still a beach.
I guess the dogs like it. I just remember spending a lot of time underground in Toronto in the wintertime because it's chilling. I think, I'm not mistaken, we got at least one of our members in the group. I think Amanda's from Toronto as well. But anyway, well, do me a favor. Just give me a little bit of background on you. Tell me like who you are, what you're up to, and that type of stuff.
Okay, so my name's Kris. My name's Kristen Sweeting, actually. I go by Kris because Kristen's a girl's name, and whatever. I don't like explaining it anymore. I grew up in Toronto. Basically, I own EMR-Tek, which is a red light company. We do blue blocking glasses. We have to be very careful with the therapeutic claims here in Canada because it's even more stringent than, so I just say red light devices. So we do that, blue blocking glasses, and most recently cosmetics, and it seems to be kind of becoming more of a cosmetics company than an actual red light company, which has surprised me a little bit. But in regards to my background and how I got into this, when I was 3 years old, I developed an autoimmune condition called vitiligo. The disease basically spread all over my body to the point where, and I'm not looking for any sympathy, but I just need to, I kind of have to, because you can't see it anymore except on my hands and feet, I have to explain to people the severity. It's like, people were asking me if I poured acid on myself, zebra and yada, yada, yada. So yeah, it got really bad to the point where, it was everywhere on my body and quite disfiguring. My mother found this German doctor through library research. She's a scientist, and flew me to Germany. Basically, they prescribed me a cream called pseudo-catalase. It increases catalase production and reduces the hydrogen peroxide in your skin. At that point in my life, I already had multiple full-blown 4-door tanning beds in my bedroom, and I was using them daily by myself, plugging in the password and trying to repigment my skin as a daily protocol. Nothing was working. When I started using this cream and getting, natural sunlight in the summer, and then in the winter I would use the Narrowband UVB. So I put the cream on 10 minutes and then go into the tanning bed, and I ended up repigmenting most of my skin, besides my hands and feet, but I'm pretty happy with that result. So.
Yeah, that's interesting, and a lot of people haven't seen vitiligo, but I mean, there's been like Michael Jackson, I think, suffered from that, if you guys remember, back in the day. And so you see these, the melanocytes, stop functioning, or or go away or something, or just they're taken out. You said a cosmetic company, so is that like makeup and stuff like that? Is that what you mean by that? Like, or are you putting some cream on or something like that? What's the cosmetic aspect?
So essentially, there's a study where. There's a couple studies, and I'm hoping there's going to be more clinical studies that come out on it. But it's basically like an ampule, and it's full of like antioxidants. They told me to stay out of the sun. They told me to wear sunscreen, which would be a really bad idea for me because essentially most of them contain titanium dioxide. If if I was to apply it and then go swimming, it doesn't have to be going swimming or exposed to chlorine, but the coating of the nanoparticles will fall off, and then that titanium dioxide nanoparticle will actually react with my skin and create hydrogen peroxide. And if you put hydrogen peroxide on your hair, it bleaches it, but hydrogen peroxide is actually a free radical that, like you said, destroys the melanocyte. And so it's literally the worst advice, to stay out of the sun if you have vitiligo, because, well, I mean, you can kind of see what happened to Michael Jackson with that when they prescribed him umbrellas. But this serum is a green tea serum, and basically scientists applied green tea soaked cotton pads to the face of women after extreme oxidative stress, and the skin rejuvenation from red light application, 670 nanometers, so that's red visible light, it was accelerated 10 times. So there's like a synergy between the reactive oxygen species or free radical scavenging capacity of the green tea, specifically epicatechin gallate, and the red light. There's some sort of synergism going on. And there's also more studies. So like if that was just like a one-off, I would be like, okay, maybe that was just, weird, even though it makes sense. But there's not, there's more studies that are backing some of this up. So.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess when you say cosmetic, is some of it designed to cover up the vitiligo? Is that part of that? Is it at the same time help to
No,
hopefully?
No, I don't like makeup at all. I think, I think makeup's really, really hard on the skin. But this, topical application of antioxidants is, we're not marketing or claiming that it has any sun protection factors, but, anyone who's done any research on, antioxidants and topical application of antioxidants knows that across the board, vitamin C and vitamin E is what plants and animals use both to protect themselves from the sun, besides our human photoprotective response, which we have built into our system to protect us from the sun. And my main question is it better to, wear sunscreen, completely deactivate your human natural photoprotective response and just, disregard nature? Or is it better to let ultraviolet B interact with your skin? And I can explain how that works and how it engages the human photoprotective response, and then support it with topical application of antioxidants, because our skin is exposed to, too many free radicals these days, from the radio frequency radiation to the blue light to the chemical pollutants in the air. It's just nonstop.
Yeah, I mean, so obviously that stuff affects people outside of vitiligo. I'm interested about, like you said, the advice. What is the advice based on that would tell you to stay out of the sun if you have vitiligo? What is the concern is because you don't have the melanocytes to protect yourself and you're going to burn more easily, or what's the thought on that?
Essentially, yes. And yeah, essentially that is the thinking. The thing is that people with vitiligo actually have reduced incidence of, all kinds of cancer, in terms of, they have like increased autoimmune surveillance. So, so it's weird. And, in people with vitiligo, the cells are going, the melanocytes, melanoma is the main killer for skin cancer. The melanocytes are going to die before, generally speaking, they, become, cancerous. They're going to choose to die. So, and that will result in depigmentation. But yeah, I think that's the main reason. It's very strange because my white spots that I had, they never like burned like significantly. Like it's really weird. I really don't understand it, but I never like saw huge burning from it, even though it has zero melanin in it, which it still puzzles me.
Yeah, I mean, it's a couple things. I mean, and again, I haven't really looked into the pathophysiology of vitiligo in great detail. I kind of know the basics of it, but when we see people with like, say, type 1 diabetics, and they have, they're unable to produce insulin, in a lot of cases, the beta cells are still there. They're just not functioning well. They just lost the ability to secrete these, the secretory granules. And so in some cases, you can see it stimulated, and you might be able to coax them back into function. There's some thought about that. So I'm just wondering if the melanocytes are completely disappeared, or they just lost some capability to produce the melanin. And I don't know if you know that. I mean, it may be that they're still there, but they're just not functioning well. Do you know if that's the case, or are they just gone completely?
I don't know if it's the case, but my understanding is that if a cell undergoes apoptosis, for example, a hair cell, if it undergoes apoptosis, cell death, then there's no bringing it back. But these hair cells, they remain in what's called telogen, or dormant phase, where they look like they're dead for 2 to 3 years. And that's probably why it's easier to treat, diseases in general, at the beginning. And that's why vitiligo patients, when they're young, like I was, have more success than when they're older, because I think maybe they stop producing the melanin, and then they have a little bit of a time frame where you can stimulate them back to life with sunlight, or narrowband UVB, until the process where they actually, commit cell death.
Yeah, I'm just saying, I just did a quick search. I'm kind of multitasking here and seeing that, and they said they have found melanocytes in vitiligo skin biopsy. So there's some evidence that maybe some of them still remain. So that's perhaps encouraging. The other thing, you talk about not burning in those white spots without melanin. I mean, the typical thought is, melanin protects us from the sun, and you look at people that live near the equator. They typically have darker skin than people live, up near the polar regions, and that's a thought. But what we see, and I don't know if you've delved into this, but with dietary changes, a lot of people are seeing less photosensitivity, less burning. If they remove certain, most of these modern processed foods from the diet, they seem to have better sun tolerance, which would make sense. I mean, as a species, we spent arguably a lot of time outside, and less time like we do now, where we're all, kind of inside and covered up. But any thoughts on how, I mean, outside of, I know the red, you're talking about the red, do you have any kind of dietary changes that have impacted your vitiligo that you mess with?
No, I don't. But I can say that whenever I'm feeling, a little bit down, or I'm feeling weak, I jump on steak, 100%. That's all I eat. And I made some notes today, but it's saying your internet connection unstable. But anyways, okay, it's gone. I think it's just like, meat has a lot of, you obviously know a lot about this, but I was just thinking, like, meat has a lot of creatine in it, and it, that increases ATP. I mean, that's like a fundamental reason why it's so good. Yeah, man, when I'm feeling bad, I jump on just pure steak, and in like 4 or 5 days, I'm back to normal. And I don't know why I just don't keep doing it. I should probably. I ate like 2 steaks yesterday, so.
Yeah, I had a dozen eggs and a ribeye steak for breakfast, and so that's pretty typical for me. But it's interesting, I don't know. You may be aware, Joe Rogan had vitiligo, and he went, did a month of carnivore, and he said it helped him with regard to that. So that was kind of an interesting thing. So, tell me a little bit more about the red light stuff. Does that help the vitiligo? I mean, I've talked to people with red light companies before, and blue blocker glasses, and they're different. Different thoughts on what's going on and what it can help. Does it seem to help vitiligo? And what else do you use it for? If you use, I assume you use it.
Yeah, so yeah, I do. I use all kinds of lights, but essentially, in Canada, we can't make any therapeutic claims on any of our devices. They're just red light devices. But if you're coming to EMR-Tek, then you're probably an informed consumer. That's definitely what I can say. I mean, Essentially what red light does, red and near infrared light, is it stimulates, the production of cellular energy, similar to, it's like creatine, it's like increasing ATP, and so I actually like combining red light with creatine. And then at the other end of the spectrum, so to speak, you're reducing, it's known to reduce acute inflammation. So I think like anything with like chronic inflammation, like that's, I mean, like even like depression, is like 50% of mood disorders are like related to like some sort of like systemic or neurological depression. And it's like, at first I was shining this light on my head to, regrow hair. I'm not saying that that's what my product does or claiming that that's what it does, but that's why I made my first red light device for myself. And I noticed that my mood, my mood changed a lot. And so that's my favorite way to use my lamp, my red light on my head. 2 to 3% of the near infrared photons actually penetrate the skull. Depending on how thick your hair is and where you're applying it. Obviously, it's best to apply it right here, because the bone is thinnest, and that's where the prefrontal cortex lays. But yeah, I mean, it's really amazing because you're addressing, chemical energy, which is huge, and then you're addressing inflammation at the same time. So I'm not surprised that like all these studies show improvements in a vast majority of complications.
Yeah, it's what I've seen, with the red light stuff, and I have one, and I use it pretty frequently. Not, sometimes I forget, it just kind of gets too busy, but it helps me with sleep and recovery. It's the biggest thing I've seen personally. I know some of the research on there that's out there talks about potential for skin improvements, and I've seen some studies in athletes looking at basically recovery, and that's what I've experienced. To some degree, I seem like I sleep better after I do that. I like to do that before I go to bed for some reason, and
there actually has been. Sorry, go ahead, Sean.
No, I was just saying, and I see somebody in the I don't know, probably maybe it's who wrote that. Becky maybe wrote that about the benefits of red light, as far as that stuff goes. So the vitiligo, I mean, that you said is mostly resolved except in hands and feet. And I wonder if I'm just wondering why hands and feet. I don't know if there's a temperature, maybe not a temperature issue or blood flow issue. I wonder why it's so recalcitrant in the hands and feet. Is there any thought on why that is?
Yeah, it's because your hands are exposed to so much chemicals. I don't know if you can see it. It's not much. You can see a little bit there. I'm pretty white right now here in Canada. It's on the tips of my fingers. My feet are way worse. But it's just because, you're always washing dishes. Your shoes are always on. They're rubbing against, causing, irritation. And that's essentially what Karen Shellreuter, she's actually a PhD researcher for vitiligo and a dermatologist in Germany. I think she might be retired now. This was 20 years back, but that's what she said. And, she was like fixing people like left, right, and center, people were copying her products. And it was, you can actually run a blood test. There's some blood tests that we ran back in the day to even see if this would work for you, like she wasn't, when you have something that works, it worked in 95% of people. That's what the consensus was. And if you come to North America, they're like, every single doctor I went to was like, stay out of the sun, wear sunscreen. I was like a kid with a peanut allergy. I also have a peanut allergy, so I'm double autoimmune, probably triple. But yeah, I just wasn't feeling the umbrella and the fanny pack, with the EpiPen. It's not a good look. So I'm glad I didn't listen. My mom saved me.
Do you know, I mean, just out of curiosity, do you know if the incidence of vitiligo has been increasing over the years? Is it something that's more common than it used to be, or maybe you know that?
I would assume that it is because, you know, this world is getting ridiculous. You know, there's the thing is my understanding of vitiligo is, you know, the higher concentrations you have in your skin of hydrogen peroxide is probably, you know, the more likely that your melanocytes are going to die. Radio frequency, you know, blue light, all these chemicals, they all create excess free radicals, and you know, so I wouldn't be surprised if it is rising significantly, like all autoimmune stuff.
Yeah, I mean that's the case. And do you know, I mean, is this something more commonly affect many, if not, I think from what I've looked at, the majority of autoimmune diseases, particularly like Hashimoto's thyroiditis and some of these other ones, tend to skew more towards females than males. There's some exceptions there, but what about vitiligo? Do you know if that's mostly a male or female?
I don't know that. When I went over there, we had a huge group when I went to Germany, and you know, it was a mix. One thing that I can say that's interesting is they took people to the Dead Sea, and that's where they saw the best repigmentation with this pseudo-catalase cream. It's something to do with the atmosphere. It's like there's like it's the salt in the water, and the magnesium actually reduces the hydrogen peroxide, and then because of the hue of like I think it's like the salt in the air, it like lets the UV, it like modulates the spectrum of sunlight to like a different ratio of ultraviolet A to ultraviolet B, and it ends up being super beneficial for vitiligo patients. And I just never needed to do it because the treatment worked.
And so, I mean, you know, what you do with you know, the red light and the cosmetics, and then I can't remember what the glasses. Obviously, that's not going to. I don't think that's going to make much of an impact on the vitiligo. But are the primary customers you're seeing? Are they people that are concerned about vitiligo, or what? Who are the people that are using what your company's producing?
Yeah, I mean, it's, you know, it's honestly, it's a lot of men and women who for the cosmetics, it's like people who don't want to use sunscreen. And they're aware that the application of topical antioxidants reduces, you know, erythema, which is burn, UVB induced permanent dimmers, and, you know, gene expression associated with skin aging. It literally, like, if you could tick off everything that sunscreen does, maybe it doesn't do it perfect, like as well, but it lets you synthesize vitamin D in the skin. I mean, basically, so those are some of the clients, like the sun lovers that don't want to wear sunscreen. And just for the red lights, you know, people who, I mean, oh man, it really ranges all different kinds of situations. You know, my response to them is that we can't make any therapeutic claims. But yeah, I mean, it's literally like endless range of people that have issues that they're trying to address, and yeah, it's from anything from hair growth to, you know, people wanting to improve skin, you know, the way their skin looks, to you know, joint pain, to surgical applications, macular degeneration. You know, it's the list goes literally, it's just on and on.
Yeah, I know there's been, you know, at least a number of scientific studies that have at least looked at this. So there's some information back then. I don't know, you know, which one it actually works real well on. So you said, you know, you built your own red light device initially. How did you, I mean, do you have a background in engineering, or how did you figure out how to build one of these, or are there commercially available products you can just kind of, you know, mix and match and make the way you want? How did that come about?
Yeah, essentially it was something like that. But I was following another doctor, and he was telling me that flicker was bad, so I knew how to do that. My dad's I've been so on the scientific. My mom's a scientist, and then my dad is a 5G contractor. So um, I'm like pretty technical. I knew it was easy to eliminate flicker. You just have to change the driver and the light. So I just made my own, and my girlfriend was at the time. I was like 18, and I had some hair loss. It hasn't receded like at all. It's just like stopped. Um, but yeah, I basically. Sorry, can you repeat that question? How did I make the? Oh yeah, she was rubbing my head. She just like felt all these little hairs coming in, and yeah, that's when I was like, well, I wasn't really surprised, but I kind of was surprised that it fixed it like that, So that's kind of where it started with the red light.
Yeah, I was just wondering when you said you made your own device. I mean, obviously, I mean, you've got to find the materials, and I just don't know what's available commercially. If you have little red light emitters that you can string together, or how that.
I have a manufacturer. I have engineers that I work with. There's like I've designed like a lamp for like Duncan Keith, who's like an NHL player, and a lot of athletes are buying those lamps now. They're like completely sold out, but yeah, generally I just design it, and then I have my engineer work on it with me, and we complete the project. So, but I do have some electrical knowledge.
All right, very good. So you mentioned the wavelength for visible red, and then there's, I guess, a near infrared that some people use. Is that part of the process that you use, both of those, or what are the wavelengths you use, and why do you use them?
Yeah, so 630 nanometers, 670 nanometers, and 830 nanometers are what our lamp emits. In the scientific literature, I'm not saying that our lamp does that. It just emits those wavelengths, or does this. But in the scientific literature, what happens is essentially those wavelengths hit the fourth enzyme in the mitochondrial electron transport chain, and they release nitric oxide. When nitric oxide's released, oxygen can be processed more effectively, and the net result is more ATP, chemical energy, adenosine triphosphate. So, then that energy is used to power the cell. So essentially, it's like turbocharging the cellular engines, the mitochondria.
The higher frequency, what is the higher frequency of the 830 doing? Because I have the red light I have, I think it does like 630, 670 or somewhere in that range. I can't remember the numbers, but what does the 830 do?
Yeah, so 630 and 670. So it's been studied that these wavelengths, these three wavelengths, are most effectively absorbed by cytochrome C oxidase, the fourth enzyme in the mitochondrial electron transport chain. 630 and 670 are red visible light. That doesn't penetrate too deep. That is mostly used for skin. 830 nanometers is near infrared light. That will penetrate very deep into the body, depending on the power density. Yeah, Sean, I think that probably will upgrade you with a Firehawk at some point. I don't know if you've seen that lamp, but we are getting some interesting reviews on it.
Yeah, interesting. I'd be interested to look into that. So what what about vitamin D synthesis? My understanding is it doesn't impact that. Is that your understanding as well?
I haven't read any information saying that red light impacts vitamin D synthesis. Vitamin D is synthesized by ultraviolet B. Specifically, I believe it's narrowband, like 311, 312 is the best. Actually, that could be wrong. It could be 294. That's the best, but I'd have to double check that. There is some literature on which wavelength exactly is best for vitamin D synthesis. I think it's 294.
Okay. And there's a question about, I mean, because you talk about wavelength, the length of the light wave, and then frequency. Some people talking about, what is there a pulse frequency that makes the difference, or is it just constant, a constant emission, or how does that work?
So there is, if we're talking about like pulse light, there are some studies that say like pulse light is better. But if you don't know what you're doing with pulsed light, you really want to stay away from it. And that's why for the general public, you want to have a light with minimalistic flicker. I mean, if it's connected to any outlet via a plug, like an AC plug, it's going to have flicker. It just depends on which drivers you're using, and essentially that's pulsation.
So, I mean, is there some sort of like, I don't know, transformer that you put in between on the unit because I mean, I don't know how do you power your units? Is it DC then, or what is
Oh, it's AC, but we use an AC linear adapter. So the driver is essentially, it's the lowest flicker driver that you can use. So, there's some companies out there that take flicker measurements, and they'll do it at like a distance that's kind of not applicable, where the power density is not applicable. And flicker is like, it follows inverse square law like any other EMF. So like the farther away from the device you can get, the lower the reading is going to be. So like you can take one of these panels and like measure the flicker from like 4 feet away, and it's going to say 0%. But is that's when you put it closer, it's going to read higher. So, but yeah, I mean it's really easy. I don't know why a lot of these companies haven't figured that out. It's just an AC linear power driver. So that's really all.
Yeah, no, like you're up in Canada, I'm up in the Pacific Northwest. Our latitude is kind of similar. I assume Toronto is still a little bit farther north of Seattle, but it's probably fairly close. And it's right now it's middle of December, and so we have very short days. I mean, the sun doesn't come up around here till like 7:30, and it sets at like 4:45 or something like that. What is the sunlight obviously contains more than red light. And so a lot of people will say, the sun has this, there's reasons to be out in the sun for various reasons. Do you find benefits from sunlight outside of the red light? I mean, you mentioned you had different light type things. How do you, what else is going on with the sun besides giving us red light? I know a lot of people talk about the dangers of blue light, particularly in reference to the time of day. Like if you're up at night staring at blue light till 2 o'clock in the morning, it's a problem. So how do we sort of figure out what's going on with sunlight, other than just saying, hey, when the sun's out, you should be in it? That's not an option for everybody, but again, there's more than red light from the sun.
Yeah, I mean, there's ultraviolet light. So essentially, because I have vitiligo, I have to be careful with ultraviolet A. I've tested it. I've done a lot of different tests. Yeah, I use narrowband UVB to get my vitamin D, but the same thing applies. Like if you're going to use synthetic ultraviolet light, and not be scared of it, which you shouldn't be scared of the sun, and you shouldn't be scared of synthetic ultraviolet light to get your vitamin D. The thing that I've read about oral vitamin D ingestion is, I think the new consensus is that it's not too high levels or levels that are out of range. It's dysregulated vitamin D activity in the body that actually contributes to pushing calcium into the wrong spots. And the thing that I'm worried about is like, what would be the best way to dysregulate like vitamin D activity in the body, besides consuming like 90% via oral or like 100% via oral route, when you're supposed to synthesize 90% in your skin. I mean, that would probably be a pretty quick way to dysregulate the activity. Yeah, I mean, I use narrowband UVB daily, especially in the winter and sometimes in the summer. you know, it just improves the mood. Vitamin D is, you know, obviously correlated with like a reduced all-cause mortality, pretty much across the board. And yeah, so what I use is red light in the morning, red and near infrared light in the morning, and then I do narrow band UVB in the afternoon. And then at night, I will just turn on my little fire wave. It emits wavelengths that do not suppress melatonin, so they're over 630 nanometers, or I think the safe zone starts at 620, but it's basically red light that doesn't suppress your melatonin. And I put that on, and I put the blue blockers on, you know, for like an hour. I'm not wearing these things for like, you know, especially the red lenses, I'm not wearing them for like, you know, 2 to 3 hours. Like it just strips the color from the TV completely. So it's like black and red, and it's like, you know, it's not the best if you're watching Avatar or something. And like I think the studies show that like if you shield your eyes from the blue light with like a really effective, you know, blocking agent like a red lens, then it only takes like 1 hour for the melatonin levels to recover.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say, because you mentioned that red light doesn't interfere with melatonin. That's my understanding. As the sun goes down and we're seeing more and more red light, that's kind of a cue, you know, to get us ready for bed. And, you know, the melatonin levels start to increase, you know, at a certain point, and that's part of the sleep process. Is that correct the way I'm understanding that?
That's definitely correct. There's actually been studies where at nighttime, 22 female athletes were exposed to red light, and it increased their melatonin levels. They weren't even wearing blue blocking glasses. I mean, they could have been, but they didn't disclose that in this study, and I highly doubt it. And which is surprising, because probably a lot of them were on their phone. I mean,
yeah, that's pretty common, it seems like. So do you find that the vitiligo, does it wax and wane on you? Do you see sometimes it increases and decreases? Is that something you notice with season, or something you're doing lifestyle-wise?
no, my vitiligo is super stable right now, but that is because I'm like a lizard. I will go out in the sun constantly. Like when I went down to Mexico, I didn't put sunscreen on once, which is like the absolute, it would like, I think a dermatologist would probably like crucify me in terms of vitiligo. But I didn't put it on once. I was using my serum, and I think basically for me now, the key to stabilizing and keeping my vitiligo stabilized is constant exposure to sunlight. If that's narrowband UVB or just normal afternoon sunlight, that's what's stabilizing my vitiligo. So I have no like remissions for like 15 years.
I mean, I guess, you know, like you said, you've got this antioxidant, you know, serum or cream. Have you tried, like, you know, applying it on one arm and not applying it on another, or have you done side by side where you can tell a difference? Has that been looked at?
Like, so I could like notice like a reduced erythema or something like that.
Yeah, or something to see if.
I don't think the sun's strong enough out here. Like, is it? Well, you know, I would, but you know, we just released it. I haven't seen too much of that. I'm not super worried about that, but it is something I will try. You know what? I could use it upstairs in my tanning bed and just fry myself a little bit. I mean, I know how to do it. So, yeah, that'd be interesting.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I was going to ask you about that tanning beds, because, you know, tanning beds, you know, if you talk to a dermatologist, it's, you know, it's the worst thing in the world. But there are, you know, obviously, you know, and there's different types. Some of them emit more UVA than others, I suppose. So you have a UVB basically tanning bed. Is that what you have?
Is strictly narrow band UVB. It's better than full spectrum ultraviolet B. You know, it creates more mutations. I've read the literature on this, but I forget exactly what it is. There's something like it creates more mutations, but there's then another thing that offsets it that makes narrow band. So a narrow band 311 to 312 nanometer wavelength better than the full full broadband, full spectrum of UVB. So so that's why it's like the preferred thing. And yeah, I mean, most tanning beds emit high levels of ultraviolet A. You know, when you cut an apple in half, it turns brown because it's oxidation, right? When ultraviolet A hits your melanin, the pigment, it oxidizes that melanin. It creates free radicals, and melanin acts as a free radical sponge. It soaks it up, and that's literally why you turn brown. It's oxidating your melanin, and yeah, that's the problem with tanning beds that are just aimed at, you know, making you dark. And they work because they're full of UVA. They have very little UVB, which actually triggers a human photoprotective response. And I can talk about this because I've done quite a bit of research on this. The human photoprotective response, ultraviolet B hits your skin. If you put sunscreen on, it don't work. But what happens is this UVB hits your skin, generates melanin from your melanocytes. It translocates it. That's the scientific term. So it shifts it to the apex of the nucleus. So the DNA is right here, and it shifts it to the apex of the nucleus to shield it. Literally, it creates what's called a supranuclear cap and of melanin, and basically, so the UVA comes down, creates all these reactive oxygen species, and this supranuclear cap of melanin just absorbs it all like a sponge and gets oxidized, and that's why you turn brown. But yeah, I mean, if you don't have UVB to you know, stimulate the, you know, genesis of the melanin and shift it, then you're just destroying your skin.
So, I mean, well, I guess you said that a lot of people go into a tanning device just so they get dark, and they're not producing this supernuclear cap out of melanin because they don't have sufficient UVB, I suppose. If you're in just a UVB, like you said, you have a narrowband UVB light emitting tanning bed, does that provide a tan as well? I mean, I think you're saying it does, but I'm not sure.
It does, but it's very light, and it's like delayed. There's 3 types of tans. And so there's like acute, like ultraviolet A, like you get out of the tanning bed and you're like, boom, you're like, you like look at your shirt, lift up your boxers, and you can see a little tan line. That's like the acute phase. Then there's like kind of something in the middle, and then there's like delayed, and that's what UVB does. And it's very faint, you know, and it builds up after months.
Interesting.
But also, I think the narrowband UVB, you know, it trains your melanocytes almost. You know, I have a feeling, you know, I don't know this, but I feel like it trains your melanocytes to produce, like, you know, melanin more effectively, you know, with daily exposure. It's kind of like adaptive, like we are adaptive creatures, right?
So I just want to outside of light exposure and, you know, with regard to vitiligo, do you find it's responsive to general lifestyle behavior things? You know, like you mentioned, diet makes you feel better, but I don't know if it impacts your vitiligo. I've seen people where it has. But do you find it's sleep regulation, diets, exercise? You know, I mean, we talked about sun exposure. Do those things have an impact on this, from what you can tell?
Not for me.
I mean, what was your lifestyle like? You know, when you first were diagnosed, were you just a normal, healthy kid, or were you? I don't know what your lifestyle was like.
I was a normal, healthy kid. And I was 3 years old. I was normal, healthy. I can't really remember too much back then, but I, you know, from what my parents say, it was pretty healthy and a little bit of a brat, but other than that, you know, pretty good. Yeah, you know, nothing helped me. I mean, I didn't at that time. I was 9, where I was looking for answers. If I found just eating meat, because look, I actually know Michaela Peterson. I've, you know, had a couple drinks with her, and I know her story. She's from Toronto too, and my best friend, his girlfriend is her best friend. So we've intertwined a little bit, and that's how I was first introduced to this idea of eating meat only and how it helped her and her autoimmune conditions. If I was back in the day and had the brain inside my 9-year-old head, I would definitely try this carnivore diet, because, you know, it's seems to be helping people immensely with autoimmune conditions across the board.
Yeah, we've definitely seen a lot of autoimmune help, which is kind of interesting. And, you know, I think we're still, I mean, there's so many things we don't know, but I think, you know, I think our environment is contributing to a lot of this, and whether it's some of it's through food, some of it's through chemical exposures in the environment. You know, we're living in a much different world, you know, even in the last 20 years than we were, you know, 100 years ago. And then, you know, if you certainly want to go back 1,000 years, it's an entirely different planet, basically, or the human species is, I don't know if you want to call it evolved, maybe devolved or something. We're kind of swimming in a sea of, you know, hazards, I suppose, from the air quality. Yeah. What's that?
We're working on devolving. We're working on it pretty hard.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you look back and, you know, I mean, if you look at the fossil records, it clearly shows we've devolved and we've lost brain size and skeletal stature and dental health and all these types of things from what we've done with the civilization. For the pros and cons, let me ask you about, you know, so the serum you have, is it meant to be applied over the whole entire surface of the body, or is it, I mean, how do you use that stuff?
Yeah, so essentially just crack it open. You apply it on your face. You don't want to get it on your eyelids, not on your ears. In clinical dermatology, basically it has to be under 500 Daltons to actually penetrate. So like anything that's not, you know, the correct size, it's not gonna, it's just gonna kind of stay on the surface of your skin. When you crack open this vial and put it on your face, avoid the ears, avoid the eyes. Make sure you don't get too much in your eyebrows, because it will seep down. I worked on this for like 2 years, 12 batch runs. We manufacture in South Korea, so it's like legit stuff. You can put one vial will do like your face, your neck, your whole chest. I mean, that's what a lot of the women essentially, but some men are using it for, and it literally absorbs like that. Like I could literally crack a vial in like maybe 2 minutes. You wouldn't even know I applied it. It's like not like the other like serums that just stay on your skin like humectants. And yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, with a lot of like topical creams and stuff like that, you know, the second you take a shower, I mean, I don't know how much it absorbs, but it goes away. But if this stuff is absorbing and doing something, what is the frequency of the application? I mean, do you need to do it every day? Do you need to do it once a week, or what's the thought on that?
So you apply it in the morning, and then you do the red light, right? You sit in front of the red light for about 10 minutes. In Asia, red light is used for skin whitening. I made this serum. I mean, I can't make the claim for hyperpigmentation. What I can do is say brightening. I can't even say whitening. It's just like some regulatory weird stuff. I don't know. But anyways, the term is essentially it's whitening, but it's brightening. And it's once in the morning and then once at night. But you know, I think that we're coming out with a cream for nighttime, so you know, it's just a little bit heavier, a little bit more moisturizing, and I'm excited for that. And you know, the weird thing is, I just turned 30. I've been baking in the sun, like I'm like, I can't even tell you how much sun exposure and synthetic ultraviolet exposure. I don't have any skin damage, you know, and you know, to the point where, so you know, something's weird with this whole damaging the skin thing with sunlight. And you know, I know people, and they'll be like, yeah, well, I've seen people who will go out and tan all the time, and you know, they look like, you know, their skin's been chewed up. And it's like, well, the thing about the sun is that it's the red light in the morning that actually prepares your skin to accept the ultraviolet radiation in the afternoon. And most people, like those people that just want to get a tan, they go hit the beach at like 11 o'clock. And they don't get the preconditioning, which is scientifically proven. Red and near infrared light preconditions the skin to accept the ultraviolet light in the afternoon. And then the sunset is also red. And like I said, it reduces acute inflammation. So you just got acute inflammation from ultraviolet exposure during the afternoon, and then you miss the sunset to reduce the inflammation. So of course, if you don't use the sun properly, like we're meant to be out all day, not in just go down to the beach at 11 and come back at 3, it's going to have these kind of effects.
Yeah, so like this morning, I get up and take my dogs for walks. So I'm out in the sun, even though it's a little bit cloudy out here, but like 7, 8 o'clock in the morning, and I think it was like 38 degrees, but I'm just in a t-shirt walking around. I'm okay with that. I guess a little bit of cold exposure is beneficial, and some people think as well. But hey, let me ask you a question about, so you're in Canada. Is your product available? I mean, is it U.S. based? Is it Canadian based? Can you get it? Where can you get this? Is this international? What's the standard status so far?
Yeah, international. All my products are international. Literally, if you place it in, I've never had an order to Tibet, but I'm sure we could get some there. I don't know. I've never had a problem with shipping anywhere. Mexico is sometimes a little bit complicated. The shipping down there is a little bit wild, but I've always got my packages through there. So yeah, literally international. Philippines, Bali, anywhere really. Russia, Poland. I was just in Poland for 9 months in Warsaw, Poland. That was an experience.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, unfortunately, we're running out of time. I'd be interested to hear about that. But tell us, if you don't mind, Kris, where people can go to find out more about this stuff if they're interested in purchasing some of the products. If you have any social media that you frequent that you want to, link in here, we'd be happy to let us know about that.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sean. I appreciate that. So my company, the website is EMR-Tek.com. My Instagram tag is at EMR no hyphen. So EMR-Tek Inc. INC. And on Facebook it is at EMR Inc. And that's
okay. There's this one question about somebody asking about if glasses are coming back in stock. I guess maybe you sold out on something. I'm not sure, but
yeah, where is he located? Because I'm going to put them back in stock because we just had like 1,000 pairs manufactured, so they're done. And for sure, if you're in the U.S., I can get them in like 2 days via like an Amazon manual order.
Yes, so he's in Texas. All right, well, awesome, Kris. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for taking the time and sharing with us your company and some expertise. Maybe we'll check back in down the road and see how things are going with you. Anyway, thanks so much, guys. I got to go do a bunch of stuff, and we'll see you guys tomorrow. Everybody else, take care, Kris. Thank you.
Take care. Thank you so much. Bye.
Join Revero.health for a 30-day free trial to get access to live Q&A with VIP guests, social community meetings, member discounts, low-carb healthcare providers list, forum, workouts, monthly challenges, early access to podcasts, recipes, carnivore diet guide, fasting guide, shred guide, and much more.